Welcome to the United States of Small Business, a podcast where the essence of American entrepreneurship is celebrated in every episode. With host John Quick at the helm, join us as we embark on a journey through the heart of the nation, uncovering the inspiring stories of small business owners from coast to coast. Experience the vibrant energy of bustling cities and the serene beauty of small towns, all while discovering how individuals are turning their entrepreneurial dreams into reality, even against the greatest odds. Each episode brings you face to face with the dreamers, creators, and doers who form the economic backbone of our country, all sharing their spirit of innovation and resilience. Whether you are in the early stages of sowing the seeds for your own business, scaling new heights in your current venture, or simply captivated by tales of grit and triumph, you are in the right place. Tune in on platforms like Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and beyond. For deeper insights and to connect with the heart and soul of America's main streets, visit UnitedStatesOfSmallBusiness.com. Subscribe to United States of Small Business with host John Quick now and be inspired by the powerful stories of entrepreneurship, community, and the unwavering pursuit of the American dream. Begin your journey of inspiration with us today.
Welcome back to the United States of Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, John Quick. Today, we are delving into the extraordinary tale of Bob West, a visionary who transitioned from the pinnacle of Colorado's architectural scene to the authentic life of a rancher. Following years of merging demanding work schedules with escapes to his cherished ranch, Bob encapsulates his life adventures in his memoir, 20 Miles of Fence, Blueprint of a Cowboy, capturing the essence of both Yellowstone and city slickers. Currently, Bob is at the forefront of a ranch-themed bed and breakfast in Livermore, Colorado, breathing new life into the essence of a Wild West with a local mercantile and a saloon. Join us as we explore Bob's incredible journey from crafting designs to cultivating dreams amidst the natural beauty of Wyoming and Colorado. Thank you so much for joining us today on the United States of Small Business Podcast. Bob West, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, this should be fun. People are in for a treat today. Before we dive into all the cool stuff you've done, Bob, take me back to where the heck did you grow up?
Well, I was born in Colorado Springs in 1955, but my father worked for Chevrolet Motor Division. So I kind of call myself a General Motors brat because I moved every 5 years all over the country. So I've lived in Pittsburgh, Detroit, of course, Motor City, Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, and Cleveland. But I came back to Colorado for college.
Nice.
And I've been here ever since, pretty much.
So you kind of got the architecture bug when you were in college. What kind of spurred you into getting into that field in the first place?
Well, I actually wanted to be an architect in high school. I took some mechanical drafting classes, and the teacher, Mr. Fisher, this was in Pennsylvania, told me I had a lot of talent drafting. So I really liked it, and that's really what started my architectural career.
Nice. So take me back to when you first got that first job right out of college at an architecture firm. Did you think you'd get one right away? Did you have to apply for 100 different jobs? What was it like coming right out of college and jumping into a career like that?
Well, I was really lucky because I went to a Rotary meeting in high school, and I was hired by an elderly architect that was semi-retired. So I got a lot of experience even in high school. And so when I graduated with my master's out of the University of Colorado, I wanted to work in Boulder because I just loved Boulder and there weren't that many firms. And so fortunately, my professor talked to the best firm in town and said, hey, you've got to hire this guy. And I was hired right out of school. So that was terrific.
That's awesome. So eventually you went from working for a firm to owning a firm. What did that look like? Tell me about how that happened.
Well, that was a life shocker. You know, you come out of school, it was a 30-person firm, one of the best in the state, and it went essentially bankrupt in 1986, only 7 years after I started. we were 30 people and it dwindled down to 6, and I was one of the last standing. And I was looking around me, busy as usual, wondering what is going on here. And I ended up buying it with a couple of other partners for about $13,000. I bought 28% of the firm.
Nice.
And we were essentially going bankrupt. We were selling the furniture out of the conference room when a developer walked in that I knew, and he took a chance on us and hired us. 10 years later, we were the largest firm in Colorado with 275 employees.
Wow.
5 offices, and a billing that year of $56 million.
That's pretty amazing. Tell me some of those ups and down lessons that you learned from going from literally, selling the furniture to pay the bills to the biggest firm. I'm sure it was a wild ride.
It was a wild ride. And of course, I had a 35-year career with this firm. And of course, we went through, I think, 3 recessions. And every time, you go through one of these downturns, architecture really gets hit hard. And so I learned a lot about how to maneuver through that. One of the reasons that I ended up becoming a cowboy was that I was working 65 hours a week. I had a young family that had 2 boys and a stepson on a little ranchette in Boulder, Colorado. And this was about 1993. The only time they got to see me during the week was on television at some city council meeting trying to get a project approved. So they say, how do I see Dad tonight? Well, turn on the television, But they were hooked on Nintendo, which was the big gaming device. And I couldn't get them out of the basement. We had this great place in Boulder, Colorado, and all they wanted to do is play Nintendo with their friends. So my wife at the time and I decided, hey, we needed an escape. We needed to get out of here on weekends, get away from the phones, the fast pace of now 3.5 million people along the Front Range of Colorado. And it had to be within 3 hours so that we could make it on the weekends and get back to work on Monday morning. And so that's really what started the quest.
That's awesome.
We spent 2.5 years looking for something, and then I can explain how that all worked as we go forward here.
Yeah. So eventually you kind of, walked away from this very successful career to do kind of what you're alluding and talking about. So talk to me more about how the heck did you find this ranch, and where was the ranch, and what were some of the things you were looking for when you were, seeking out to purchase a ranch?
Well, you probably don't know a lot about Colorado, but it's grown so much that our main corridor up to the ski area is I-70, and you can't even get there anymore. It's gridlocked from Thursday to Monday morning. So we knew we weren't going to go to a ski area. So we started looking for just raw land in Colorado. And 2.5 years of false starts and frustration, we ended up with one last shot looking at a ranch up in Wheatland, Wyoming, which is about an hour and a half north of Cheyenne. And it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And we went into that ranch. It wasn't for sale. The owner was about 78 years old. He had just had a heart attack, and his kids did not want to continue ranching. Well, we drove into this ranch. It was kind of rocky, and we weren't all that excited. We were about done. The kids were mad, spending every weekend looking at ranches in the back of a minivan. And we drove over the top, and we looked down on this valley with the North Fork of the Laramie River, and it was absolutely spectacular. But it was a cow-calf operation. It was 4,000 acres, and it was 18 miles from the city. And they had 150 Black Angus moms, and then they raised calves to sell in the fall. I knew nothing about cattle, absolutely nothing. So we jumped in.
So jumping in, getting a farm, did you quickly sell the firm and go all in with the farm, or were you doing both for a while? Talk to me about what that looked like.
Sure. Well, ranches, particularly ones that are somewhat in bad shape, like this one was, need cash. So I got together with my wife's father at that time, who was a structural engineer in Los Angeles, very famous. I talked him into joining the group, and we bought the ranch. I stayed as an architect, so we would leave on Friday at noon and come back late Sunday night. And it was quite the clash of culture going between Boulder, Colorado and Wheatland, Wyoming.
That's pretty cool. How did you take the crash course on having a cattle farm? Did you, read books? Did you knock on neighbors' doors? How the heck did
Well,
you learn something like that from basically a brand new learning experience standpoint?
I was really lucky. We talked the rancher who, by the way, when we bought the ranch, it was Thanksgiving, and he had been on the ranch for 70 years. His father was buried on the ranch. They homesteaded it essentially. And he could not buy a turkey for his family dinner. He was
Wow.
that stretched. So he didn't really want to leave the ranch, but had to. He stayed on for a year, and he taught me everything I learned about cattle, sitting in the back or in the side of a pickup truck every morning on Saturday morning for 2.5 hours, bouncing around the ranch. He taught me everything there was.
Man, I bet he had some stories.
Well, this guy was amazing. So one of the most eye-opening, life-changing experiences I had, and it's in the book, and there's lots of stories in the book, was one morning we were up checking cattle because it was calving season. So it was in January. And the North Fork of the Laramie ran through, and it was half frozen. And there were 7 little calves standing on an ice floe in the middle of the river. And we were like, oh boy, that's not good. We crushed through the river and went on up to check out a mom who had just had a calf further up the mountain. We came back. He was driving. Got to remember, he just had a heart attack. He's 78 years old. He doesn't own the cattle anymore. I do. He sees a calf in the river, and he rams the truck, breaking ice across the river, doesn't even put it out of gear, jumps out and jumps in the river, and is holding this calf up with waist high water, trying
Jeez.
to pull him under an ice floe. I'm like, what are you doing? And I grab him. He weighs about 300 pounds because of his wet Carhartts. He hands me the calf. He says, not me, get the calf. So I grab the calf, pull it to shore, pull him to shore. And isn't that an amazing story about the love of animals from this gentleman?
Man, he loved that ranch. There's no doubt about that.
And those animals, you bet.
So then you kind of morph and you write a book about your experience, 20 Miles of Fence, a blueprint of a cowboy, probably documenting the things that you went through. What spurred you on to write a book like that? Tell me about that process.
Well, it's an interesting story. I actually got divorced, and that's actually at the end of the book. I don't want to wreck the story, but which was kind of a surprise. And I was sitting on the porch with my CFO when at the end of owning that ranch, and she had retired from Oz Architecture, which was my firm, and she started writing books, which was her passion. She had written about 10 books at that time. I had kept a journal of my experiences over the 10 years we owned it. And she read the journal and said, there's a book here. And so we started writing, and it took us a long time because we were both busy in our careers and in our lives. And COVID hit, and we had a chance to finish it. And so we wrote it, and we sent out 2 inquiries. She said, oh, this will take, several years and probably 50 inquiries to get this book published. And sure enough, Bison Books, University of Nebraska Press, called me the day after we sent the inquiry.
I love it.
And one of the sad stories here, and the reason that I'm doing these podcasts and pushing this book so hard, is Janet was a dear friend for 40 years, and she unfortunately died right after the book was published from a battle with breast cancer. She was such a hard fighter. And so she was a terrific wordsmither and just great author. And of course, she helped me write this book, or I couldn't have done it. So I really, am trying to get people to understand how good this book is. It's a cross between Yellowstone and City Slickers, is really
Nice.
what it is. But it's true. And it's self-deprecating, it's honest, it's an easy read, and people love the book.
So, how's it been received? It's been out for a couple of years now. Um, uh, do you think that are folks reading it? What's been the feedback?
The feedback's been outstanding. The problem is unknown authors really struggle. There's so many books out there. So we were invited, though, to the Tucson Book Festival. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it. That's one of the largest book festivals in the world down in Tucson in March every year. And so it did get a lot of exposure there. I'm trying to get more people to read it. That's why I'm doing the podcasts. Obviously, we would have had a much better marketing program had Janet survived, and because she had marketed several books herself. So I'm out here trying to keep it going so that people will realize, what a quality writer she was.
That's awesome. Well, folks, if you're listening in, I want to buy someone a book. So the first person to email me, John, John, at unitedstatesofsmallbusiness.com is going to get a free book. So email me. I'm going to send you one of these books. And this is going to be awesome. It's a mix between City Slickers and Yellowstone. You and I were chatting for a second before we started.
Right.
City Slickers, I remember watching that movie with my dad and thinking as a kid, I've never seen my dad laugh so hard. And now, Yellowstone is all the craze. And so it's almost the perfect timing for the book in a lot of ways. Would you agree?
I totally agree. If you don't mind, I've got a little epigraph that Janet wrote. It's really short. Let me read
feel
it.
free. Yeah.
Yeah, and you'll get an idea of how good she is and how interesting this book is. I tried to explain to her my life up there, and of course she didn't live it. She visited a few times. That's hard, to get the grit across. But this is the epigraph in the book. How do you describe the utter vastness of Wyoming prairie? The smell, the clarity of the air, the inability to judge distance, the solitude, where you can hear the sun set. Those are great words from a great, great woman.
That's awesome. So life as a rancher compared to life as a corporate CEO of the biggest architecture firm in Colorado. Which would you choose if you had to choose?
Well, I'm a cowboy now. I quit architecture at the height of my career. I now live in Livermore, Colorado. I'm raising Scottish Highland cattle now on a beautiful place on a small river with my new partner. And we own a bar restaurant called the Forks Mercantile and Saloon, where you can actually see Western culture alive and doing really well in Livermore, Colorado. We live between Fort Collins and Laramie, Wyoming.
Nice. So what is that like owning this new venture, Mercantile and Saloon, something that's very customer, centric? You go from having cattle as your customer to having actual people show up. What's that been like owning something like this, a new venture?
Well, I think this small little business was harder than my architectural firm, to tell you the truth. So it's been quite an experience, but fun and important for the community. It's a gathering place for the ranching community here. Otherwise, they wouldn't get to see each other very much.
Nice. Well, my family and I are part of a group that owned the hardware store where we live in Alaska, the middle of nowhere. And, it's those little community hotspots that are so important to little towns all across the U.S.
Absolutely.
So tell me where folks can find your book. Is it on Amazon? Is it on your website? Where can they find this book?
They can find it on Amazon. Almost any group that sells books. You can get it at Barnes and Nobles down here in our area. You can go to Bison Books, University of Nebraska Press, and buy it straight from them as well.
Nice. So who's somebody, you've had a pretty amazing career. You've done a number of different things, very successful. Who's somebody in your life that you've looked up to? Who's been a hero to you and why?
I've answered this question a lot. It's an easy answer for me. It's simply my father. He fought in World War II, one of the greatest generations in Burma, in China. He had a corporate job that was incredibly demanding, and yet he was my Boy Scout leader. He was my baseball coach. He made time for me. I found that to be, hard when I was an architect working 65 hours a week. He believed in honor, and he believed in old-fashioned traits that really I think we need today. And I find that even though he wasn't a cowboy, I find those traits common with cowboys today.
Nice. So what's some advice you'd give to folks? They're going to listen to this thinking, man, this guy's accomplished so much. I could barely get out of bed in the morning. you know, what's some advice you'd give to folks who maybe are aspiring entrepreneurs or aspiring authors, or maybe they are in the corporate world and feel like they want to sell off and go live the ranch life? What's some advice you give to folks thinking through those things that you've done?
Well, I think it's so important to love what you do. I loved being an architect. I really did. I enjoyed it tremendously. I love being a cowboy. So to me, my work is not work. And people say that, but I don't know how many people actually live it. And so my advice would be, if you have a need to change what you're doing, take a chance. I believe in destiny. The book talks about destiny. I won't get into those details, but there's a great little story about a destiny piece in the book. I believe that you have to follow your voice. And if it tells you that you need to do something else, you need to take a chance, take it. Because, boy, the experiences that I've had in my life are incredible. And it's always when I took a chance and did something I wasn't comfortable with.
Nice. Well, Bob, 20 minutes has gone by in a flash. Any last minute thoughts here before we head off?
Well, if you'd like to follow me on Facebook, it's Robert Bob West or Whiskey Bell Ranch, Belle, Whiskey Bell Ranch. And you can follow, I post a lot of architecture of my past career, and I also post a lot of what happens with these Scottish Highland cattle. And if anybody knows what they are, they're very popular in the United States now. The calves look like teddy bears, and people absolutely love watching them and following them. They have amazing traits as animals. So you can do that and get a little bit more of this.
Well, folks, I'll put all the links to Bob's stuff in the podcast description. Bob, we wish you nothing but success. If folks caught the tail end of this, I want to encourage you to go back and listen to the whole thing. Bob has a book out, 20 Miles of Fence, a blueprint of a cowboy. If somebody wants that book, I'm gonna send the first person to email me a copy. So you're gonna have to email me, John, John, at UnitedStatesOfSmallBusiness.com, and I will and I will send somebody a copy, the first person to email me. Bob, we want to thank you for coming on, folks. Go check out all of his stuff. And for folks interested in hearing other episodes of the United States of Small Business, just go to UnitedStatesOfSmallBusiness.com. We're on Spotify, Pandora, iTunes, anywhere you can find a podcast, including YouTube. And we hope everybody has an awesome rest of their week. And we'll catch you next time we're on. Thank you so much.